morning. Let me throw this Tom Clancy type question at you to kick off our conversation. I'm a big fan of Clancy. His books, Debt of Honor and Executive Orders, pack probably the greatest one-two punch in modern fiction. Not to spoil the story, but the end of Debt of Honor leaves you with a question of what would happen if everyone in Congress, the Supreme Court, the cabinet, and others were permanently incapacitated, except for the vice president. So when it comes to succession planning, that has to be the ultimate challenge or worst case scenario. Friends, how do we help business owners appreciate how this dramatic fictional scenario is indeed something they need to be prepared for? Mike, we'll start with you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah, succession planning right now is so important. Everybody talking about, the great resignation, although we had a client yesterday calling it the not so great resignation just because of the impact it was having on them. And to find out that, your key employee all of a sudden is retiring at the end of the month or has just taken a new job somewhere else, and to not have that backfill, the bench strength to fill that position leaves companies scrambling. So I think now we're in this position where it's a great opportunity to think about, okay, how do we put those plans in place? How do we build that bench strength so that there are folks that can step in when the need comes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would end from a practicality standpoint of view. What I find really fascinating is a lot of times people don't know who that key talent is until you have to know. And that's the problem. That is the challenge. It's the problem. It's not problem. Nothing's a problem, right? It's the challenge is that you need to stay on top of that very consistently. And what I find interesting is that organizations are very much more practice in performance reviews, right? Everybody gets a performance review annually. It's a company metric. It's something everybody has to do. But yet, why are we not talking about succession planning every year at least? And in my opinion, it should be twice a year. So you need to have, and it needs to be separate from the performance management process, because those are two completely different things, right? Because you're always looking at the how and the what. So you need to separate those two things. And organizations, my opinion, do not spend enough time focusing on knowing who they want to retain and knowing why they want to retain that person. And it could be either in current role or projected role. And those, again, are two different conversations. And if you don't set the time aside for that, you're going to be in a position when the Clancy happens.
Sure. Jamie.
Yeah, I think people avoid the succession planning. I think it's kind of like, creating your will for some people. If I'm an owner, this is my legacy, and to talk about, who's going to take over for me and how that's going to go. There's I have to relinquish some control. I've got to accept that maybe somebody's going to come in and do it better or worse. So I think there's some emotion around it, but I think, there's two big things that are happening in true succession planning in the scenario where we're seeing of, the mom and pop company and the kids don't want it and the grandkids don't want it. If there's not a logical plan that's thought through, those are the companies that end up closing, or maybe they get acquired. So I think we're going to see that if there isn't some serious thoughts that, okay, what do I really want to happen here? What makes sense? The other piece of it is, recognizing the impact this has on all of those employees. When people know there's a retirement coming, or when it's unplanned, it's just causes so much confusion for employees. Or I'm watching that here. We have top executives getting ready to retire, but they've done a good job of saying, hey, here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to be handled. Here's the next step. There's a communication plan, and that keeps people calm. Otherwise, you see this. Well, if this happens, I'm leaving. And right now, people have the opportunity to do that. So to have that transparency, to have that communication, to let people know things are going to be okay. That's going to keep people going, okay, this is all right. Because most people don't like change, and they don't do well with it. So that constant communication, so they're not feeling blindsided. And the other piece of it is that your top talent, what's that mean for me? That's really what it comes down to. So what's in it for me? and letting that top talent know, hey, there's a career path planned for you, and here's what that entails. But that seems to be a really scary thing for people to broach, and we don't want to let the cat out of the bag too soon, and so there's a tendency to be an under communication as opposed to an over communication. I think that's where there has to be a shift of set a plan. Don't be afraid of it. Go ahead and communicate it. If the plan changes, the plan changes. Communicate that and move on. It's okay for those things to happen, but I think you're always better off talking it through and having a plan that your employees can see, and they again, that's what leaders do, right? They're supposed to set the vision. And so if we do that, this doesn't have to be such a big deal.
I think,
You touched upon. Go ahead, Mike.
oh, I was going to say, building on that, and Julie's point too, really crucial on how do you incentivize succession planning, because if in a lot of cases your performance review is based on productivity, how many pieces an hour are we getting out, what's the quality, and if I take somebody, supervisor, people off the line to go train, that's going to impact my performance review, because for that period of time I'm not getting as much out the door. But long-term, as a strategic element, as Jamie was saying, you've got to think that that's important for the business. And so we need to incentivize our people to say there's no good time to take people out for training, but it's a requirement. It's an insurance policy for our future. So how do we build that into the incentive plans so that everybody says, yes, this we need to do. This is what we're doing for kind of our long-term success as a company.
Yeah, and I like how both we kind of touched upon this, how this is all about planning for the future, making sure that there is a future and that sort of thing.